Hi, I'm Aurora Dean. I'm 32, and I'm about to share with you the story of how I was abandoned by the man I loved for power, status, and the president's daughter. Only for all of them to come crawling back when they realized I owned the $7 billion empire they now desperately need to survive. I trusted the wrong people, his family, him, even myself. But in the end, the tables didn't turn, they flipped. Have you ever been betrayed by someone you thought loved you? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe. Because this story is only just getting started. Ethan and I were a storybook romance, at least that's what everyone saw. We met in college, a whirlwind of late-night study sessions turning into late-night talks, talks into dates, and dates into an inseparable bond. He was charming, with a boyish grin that could disarm anyone. And I was just me, a girl from Austin with big dreams and an even bigger secret project brewing in my dormitory. Our love felt effortless. Weekends were for spontaneous road trips to quiet coastal towns. Evenings were reserved for candlelit dinners at our favorite Italian spot, where we'd whisper future plans and dream out loud about a life together. He'd talk about joining his family's esteemed legacy business, and I'd nod, smiling, secretly knowing my own legacy would be carved out in a different, far more disruptive way. He was my rock, my confidant, the person I imagined growing old with. We laughed constantly, shared an easy, comfortable silence, and understood each other without needing words. Or so I thought. Our world, our bubble, seemed impenetrable. From the outside, our relationship was the envy of many, perfect, wholesome, rooted in genuine affection. But there was always them, Ethan's family, the Waters. Old money, deep roots, and an even deeper sense of their own untouchable superiority. They tolerated me just barely. I wasn't from their circles, didn't have their pedigree, and certainly didn't fit their meticulously curated image of who Ethan should be with. To Eleanor Waters, Ethan's mother, I was simply a startup girl from Austin. She'd say it with a saccharine smile that never quite reached her eyes, a dismissal wrapped in politeness. Their disdain was thinly veiled, a constant hum beneath the surface of every family gathering. They looked down on my ambition, my drive, my independent spirit. They saw my drive as a phase, a cute hobby, not a serious endeavor. They certainly didn't see me as a potential equal, let alone recognize the powerhouse I was secretly building. They had no idea, absolutely zero clue, that their startup girl was already light years ahead, meticulously crafting a technology company that would shake up industries, a company that was on the brink of becoming a Fortune 500 unicorn. Virix Technologies, my stealth baby, was my whole world, my true passion project. I'd built it from the ground up, fueled by late nights, endless cups of coffee, and an unshakable belief in my vision. While they were busy planning their next charity gala or discussing their generational wealth, I was busy innovating, disrupting, and building an empire from the shadows. And that, I believed, was my strength, my quiet power. The less they knew, the better. I genuinely thought I was protecting our relationship, keeping my professional life separate from the love I shared with Ethan, shielding him from their inevitable scrutiny of my rather unconventional path. Little did I know, this very secrecy, this quiet ambition, would eventually become a powerful, unspoken weapon in a battle I never saw coming. I was so caught up in the romance, in the idea of our future, that I didn't quite grasp the full extent of their manipulation or how easily Ethan could be swayed by the lure of legacy. I was so wrong. That peachy invitation arrived nestled in a heavy cream envelope, embossed with the presidential seal. A charity gala on the White House lawn. My first thought was excitement, a chance to experience a piece of history with Ethan. My second was a familiar dread, Eleanor Waters. I knew this wasn't just a social event. It was a performance, and I was expected to play my part as Ethan's unassuming girlfriend, the startup girl who wasn't a threat. The evening itself was a blur of flashing cameras, polite conversation, and strategic networking. Ethan, groomed for these events since birth, glided through the crowd, charming everyone in his path. I tried to keep up, smiling vacuously, all the while taking mental notes on the decor and the flow of the event, assessing it from a logistical standpoint, as my mind, always business-oriented, couldn't help but dissect the planning that went into such a grand affair. Then I saw her. Eleanor, draped in emerald green, her eyes scanning the crowd with a predatory glint. She moved with purpose, a shark in an elegant pond, towards a cluster of Secret Service agents, and then Madison Bright, the president's daughter. She was beautiful, poised, radiating an aura of effortless power and polished confidence. I watched as Eleanor, with a smile that could melt steel, intercepted Madison, then subtly, almost imperceptibly, signaled to Ethan. He came over, his expression initially one of polite curiosity. But as Eleanor began her introduction, I saw a subtle shift. The way Madison's eyes lingered on Ethan and his on hers. It wasn't overt, not yet, but a seed had been planted. Eleanor, ever the master puppeteer, stepped back, allowing them to converse, her satisfied smirk confirming her success. My gut twisted. It was a calculated move, flawlessly executed. I felt it, the cold chill of apprehension, even then. Overnight, everything changed. It wasn't a sudden, dramatic breakup, but a slow, insidious drift. Ethan became distant, his calls less frequent, his texts shorter. Our weekend getaways became too busy, our candlelit dinners replaced by vague excuses about family obligations. He started to carry himself differently, a new air of importance, almost a swagger that hadn't been there before. He was always on his phone, closed off, whispering answers into it. And whenever I asked who it was, he'd just say, business. I started catching snippets of conversations, hushed tones from his end of the line. Family talks, he'd dismissively explain, brushing off my questions. But the family talks never included me. Ethan, who once shared every thought, now had an invisible wall around him, a barrier made of secrets and guarded replies. I'd overhear him mentioning Madison, or the Brights, always in hushed, reverent tones. A sickening feeling began to gnaw at me. I tried to talk to him, to understand what was happening, but he'd always deflect, reassure me, tell me I was overthinking things, that he loved me. He'd hug me tight, but I could feel the distance in his touch, a hollowness in his reassurances. His promises felt like empty echoes. Still, I believed in our bond. I believed in the Ethan I knew, the one who planned our future, the one who swore he'd never let anything come between us. I convinced myself it was the stress of his family's expectations, the pressures of his career. I held on to hope, blinded by my love and loyalty, even as the signs became clearer, brighter, more urgent warnings. I ignored the sinking feeling in my stomach, the intuition screaming at me that something was terribly wrong. I pushed it down, deep down, until I could no longer deny it. I was about to be blindsided, and it would be by the very people I had tried so hard to appease. I received the invitation to brunch on a crisp Tuesday morning. It wasn't from Ethan, but from Eleanor. The elegant script on the heavy cardstock felt like a summons, not an invitation. My stomach churned, a mix of hope and dread warring within me. Maybe, subtly, she was finally going to accept me. Maybe this was an olive branch from the woman who held Ethan's strings. I told myself to be optimistic, to go in with an open mind, to fight for whatever it was that was slipping away. The restaurant was exclusive, hushed, filled with the scent of lilies and money. Eleanor was already seated, impeccably dressed, her posture regal. She greeted me with a wide, blinding smile, a smile that never quite reached the cold glint in her eyes. "Aurora, darling, so glad you could make it," she purred, motioning for me to take the seat opposite her. A waiter appeared instantly, offering champagne. She took a glass, raising it slightly. "To new beginnings." The words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken meaning. We exchanged pleasantries, the conversation gliding over superficial topics, the weather, the latest charity event, a new gallery opening. My heart hammered against my ribs, waiting for the other shoe to drop. It did, with chilling precision, right after the waiter departed. Eleanor leaned forward, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, "Thou." Her tone remained utterly devoid of warmth. "Aurora, my dear, you're a lovely girl. Talented, I'm sure, in your endeavors." The pause was deliberate, dismissive. "But it's time to be realistic, don't you think?" My breath hitched. "I'm not sure I understand, Eleanor." She chuckled, a brittle, high-pitched sound. "Oh, I think you do. Ethan has a certain destiny, a legacy to uphold. A certain kind of woman is required for that. a woman who understands what it means to truly belong to a family like ours, to a future like his. She took a sip of her champagne, her gaze unwavering. "You've had your moment, Aurora." It was sweet. But now it's time to step aside. Gracefully, of course. The words hit me like a physical blow. Discarded like a used napkin or last season's fashion. Humiliation burned in my cheeks, but I forced myself to maintain composure. "And Ethan? What does he say about this?" I managed to ask, my voice barely a whisper. Just then, as if on cue, Ethan walked in. He looked stressed, his usual charm replaced by a nervous energy. He sat beside his mother, avoiding my gaze. I looked at him, searching his eyes for the man I loved, for any sign of defiance, any hint that he wasn't going along with this monstrous charade. Eleanor smiled at him warmly. "Ethan, darling, Aurora and I were just having a very sensible conversation." He cleared his throat, finally looking at me, his eyes clouded with what I wrongly interpreted as regret. "Aurora," he began, his voice flat, devoid of its usual warmth. I agree with my mother. This isn't just about love anymore. It's about legacy. About the family name. About what's expected of me." He swallowed hard, then added, "It's bigger than us." Bigger than us? The intimacy, the whispered promises, the future we'd meticulously planned, all dismissed as something smaller, insignificant, in the face of legacy. My heart shattered into a million pieces. The man I loved, the man I trusted, was sitting there, actively participating in my public, unapologetic discard. He wasn't protesting, wasn't fighting for me. He was confirming his mother's cruel decree. I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the polished floor, a raw, ragged sound in the hushed elegance of the restaurant. My vision blurred, tears stinging my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Not here. Not in front of them. Humiliation threatened to consume me whole. I looked at Ethan, truly looked at him, and for the first time, saw him clearly a weak man, completely consumed by an insatiable thirst for status and validation from a family that would never truly accept anyone not of their blood. I didn't say a word. There was nothing to say. I simply turned and walked out, leaving them at their table, amidst their champagne smiles and their cold, calculated cruelty. My head was held high, but my heart was utterly, completely broken. I had been discarded, humiliated, and reduced to nothing. But what they didn't know, what they couldn't possibly fathom, was that this was not my ending. This was just the beginning. The THE days following the brunch were a blur of raw emotion. I retreated to my penthouse, a self-imposed exile from a world that suddenly felt too bright, too loud, too unsympathetic. The city lights, usually a comforting embrace, now mocked my internal darkness. Every corner of the apartment echoed with memories of Ethan, of our plans, of the life I thought we were building. The silence was deafening, amplified by the hollowness in my chest. I cried until my eyes were swollen shut, tears streaming down my face, soaking my expensive silk pillowcases. I felt pathetic, discarded, and utterly worthless. The humiliation burned, a constant, searing pain. I ate nothing, slept little, surviving on coffee and the bitter taste of betrayal. My phone, usually buzzing with notifications, lay abandoned. I ignored calls, texts, emails. The world could crumble for all I cared. My heart was broken, my self-esteem shattered. I, Aurora Dean, who always prided herself on her strength and independence, was reduced to a weeping mess curled on her living room floor. It was Zara who finally broke through my self-imposed isolation. Zara Malik, my best friend since college, my most loyal confidant, and the brilliant CTO of Verix Technologies. She didn't call first. She just showed up, bypassing security with a determination born of true friendship. She found me huddled on the couch, staring blankly at nothing. She didn't try to coddle me or offer empty platitudes. Instead, she sat beside me, her presence a solid anchor in my stormy sea of despair. After a long silence, during which I continued to shed silent tears, she finally spoke, her voice firm, cutting through the fog of my misery like a laser. "Get up, Aurora," she said, her voice devoid of pity, but full of a powerful, unwavering conviction. "Look at yourself. This isn't you." I mumbled something incoherent, something about heartbreak and humiliation. Heartbreak? Yes. Humiliation? Only if you let it be, she countered, her eyes blazing with an intensity that slowly began to penetrate my despondency. Do you know what they think of you right now, Aurora? They think they've broken you. They think you're just some startup girl who got discarded. They think you're a nobody. Her words, sharp and unsparing, pricked at my wounded pride. They're right, I whispered, my voice hoarse. Zara scoffed, a sound of pure disdain. Right? She grabbed my shoulders, her gaze forcing me to meet hers. They are so breathtakingly, astronomically wrong, Aurora. The world may think you're nobody, but you and I both know the truth. You are Aurora Dean, and you, my friend, are about to remind them exactly who that is. She paused, letting her words sink in, then delivered the revelation, the truth that had been eclipsed by my emotional turmoil. Virix Technologies. Remember that little company you've been secretly building for the last 7 years, the one you poured your entire life, your genius, your soul into? I nodded weakly. How could I forget? It was my true love, my reason for existing before Ethan. Well, Zara continued, a triumphant gleam in her eyes. It's no longer a little company. We closed the Series D funding last week. You missed the celebratory champagne. And the big announcement, we are about to finalize the $7 billion acquisition of Omnicorp, a major rival. That puts us squarely on the map, Aurora, not just on the map, but owning a significant portion of the entire cybersecurity landscape. My mind, dulled by grief, slowly began to process her words. $7 billion. Acquisition. And you, my dear friend, Zara added, a wry, confident smile playing on her lips. You own 78% of it. Do you understand what that means? You are not just a founder. You are the majority shareholder of a company that is about to become a household name, a tech titan. You are a billionaire, Aurora. You are a force. They think you're discarded? You are about to become undeniable. The words hit me like a splash of cold water. $7 billion. That wasn't just money. It was power. It was influence. It was a clear, undeniable statement to the world. It was a complete, unapologetic reclamation of self. The sheer magnitude of it, juxtaposed against the pathetic figure I'd been for days, was jarring. Zara had pulled me back from the brink, not with sympathy, but with the brutal, beautiful facts of my own undeniable success. The realization dawned on me, clear and blinding. While they were busy manipulating and discarding me for status, I had quietly, meticulously built an empire. An empire they knew nothing about. My rock bottom had just become the launchpad for my most spectacular revelation. And this was just the beginning. Zara's words, the staggering revelation of VIREX's true magnitude and my immense ownership, jolted me out of my self-pitying stupor. It was like a splash of ice water, shocking me back into the formidable, clear-headed individual I had always been, the one I had allowed heartbreak to temporarily eclipse. You see, for years I had operated behind a carefully constructed velvet curtain. My identity as Aurora Dean, the tech visionary, the CEO of Virix Technologies, was a closely guarded secret. To the public, to the industry, even to many within my own company, the mastermind behind Virix was simply known as Dean A. This wasn't some elaborate ego trip. It was a strategic choice, a necessity born out of a desire to protect my work, my privacy, and frankly, to avoid the gendered scrutiny that often plagues women in leadership, especially in the cutthroat world of tech. Operating under a pseudonym allowed me to be judged solely on the merits of my innovations, on the algorithms and the security protocols, rather than on my appearance, my relationship status, or any other irrelevant facet of my personal life. It allowed the spotlight to shine solely on the PR product, on the groundbreaking advancements Virix was making in cybersecurity and national security tech. I could dominate boardrooms, make ruthless decisions, and drive aggressive growth, all while the public face remained a carefully curated, ambiguous entity. This freedom was invaluable, enabling me to focus my energy entirely on building the company without the constant distraction of PR or public expectations. My small, trusted inner circle, Zara, my legal team, a handful of key investors were the only ones privy to my true identity. To the industry at large, Dean A., was an enigma, a brilliant but reclusive genius whose strategic foresight and technological prowess were unmatched. They admired the results, chased after partnerships, and speculated endlessly about who this mysterious DNA could be. And that's exactly how I wanted it. The privacy it afforded me was a shield, allowing me to live a semblance of a normal life outside the unrelenting glare of the tech world. The contrast between my quiet, powerful boardroom dominance and the heartbreak I'd just endured was stark, almost comical in its irony. Here I was, being discarded by a man and his family for not being enough, for being just a startup girl, while simultaneously, my startup was on the verge of a multi-billion-dollar acquisition, poised to redefine an entire industry. The very thing they dismissed was my greatest triumph, my true power. In the days after Zara's intervention, as the emotional wounds began to scab over, a potent wave of clarity washed over me. I wasn't just the jilted girlfriend. I was Aurora Dean, the formidable force behind Virix. The person they thought they were stepping on was, in fact, the one holding all the cards. My devastation slowly transmuted into a quiet, simmering resolve. The pain didn't disappear overnight, but it became a catalyst. I started to reclaim my agency, piece by piece. My empty penthouse, once a tomb of sorrow, became my command center. I returned to my routines, to the rigorous discipline that had built Virix. Early morning workouts, deep dives into code, strategic calls with Zara and my team. My focus sharpened, my drive intensified. I began to heal, not by ignoring the pain, but by transforming it. Each step I took, each decision I made, was a testament to my resilience, a quiet act of defiance against the narrative of victimhood they had tried to impose on me. They wanted status. They wanted legacy. Little did they know, I was already building a legacy far more significant, far more enduring than any amount of old money or political connections could buy. My heartbreak had been a harsh lesson, peeling back the layers of a relationship that was built on a superficial foundation. It had forced me to confront a vulnerability I rarely allowed myself. But it also reminded me of my core strength, my true power. The velvet curtain wasn't just for privacy. It was a fortress, a sanctuary where my true self, the architect of a tech empire, flourished, unnoticed and underestimated. And soon, the world, including those who had once carelessly cast me aside, would be forced to take notice. TH News hit the media like a controlled explosion. Photos flooded social media, splashed across magazine covers, and dominated every news cycle. Ethan down on one knee, a dazzling ring on Madison Bright's finger, against the backdrop of the U.S. Capitol's majestic dome. The picture-perfect proposal. The media, ever eager for a fairy tale, celebrated them as the new power couple, a union of old money and political power, a match made in Washington, D.C.'s elite circles. A new American dynasty, one headline gushed. The perfect blend of tradition and future, proclaimed another. It was everywhere. Every coffee shop TV, every digital billboard, every news site. My friends, bless their hearts, tried to shield me, offering to mute my social feeds, but I refused. I consumed every article, every fawning comment, every staged photograph. I watched the video of the proposal, Ethan's carefully rehearsed speech, Madison's radiant smile. And with each click, each new image, there was a strange, almost liberating sense of detachment. The initial sting of betrayal had dulled, replaced by a cold, strategic calculation. This wasn't just about my broken heart anymore. It was about the bigger picture. Did it hurt? Of course, it did. A part of me, the part that had genuinely loved him, felt a pang. But it was fleeting, quickly overshadowed by a steely resolve. This grand public spectacle, designed to solidify their newfound status, only strengthened my conviction. They had dismissed me for this. They had humiliated me for this. And they had no idea who they were truly dealing with. I said nothing publicly. Not a single post, not a single comment. I maintained my silence, operating under the radar, much like DNA. I let them bask in their glory, let the media spin their narrative. Because while they were busy celebrating a superficial victory, I was meticulously plotting something far more substantial. This wasn't about vengeance in the petty sense. This was about poetic justice. This was about proving that true power isn't inherited or married into. It's built, earned, and wielded with integrity. My comeback wasn't going to be loud and flashy. It was going to be an earthquake, an undeniable force that would shift the very ground beneath their manicured feet. While they were busy posing for cameras, I was in my office, tirelessly working with Zara and our team, pushing Virix to new heights. The acquisition of Omnicorp was finalized, and the integration was proceeding ahead of schedule. Our innovations were leaps and bounds beyond anything our competitors, including Ethan's family's legacy firm, could even dream of. And then, I made a quiet move, an anonymous donation, a significant one. $25 million to a fund supporting women-led startups. It was an act of solidarity, a statement to myself and to the silent army of female entrepreneurs out there that I would use my unprecedented success to empower others. To ensure that other startup girls wouldn't be dismissed, wouldn't be underestimated, wouldn't be cast aside for not fitting into someone else's narrow definition of success. It was my way of pouring my heartbreak into something constructive, something that would foster true legacy, not just inherited status. The donation went largely unnoticed by the mainstream media, overshadowed by the constant stream of updates on the water's bright engagement. And that was fine. I didn't need public accolades. My work, my true impact, was just beginning to unfold. They were celebrating a union founded on convenience and ambition, while I was building a future, a true legacy, based on innovation, resilience, and quiet strength. The game had just begun, and they were still playing by rules I had long since outgrown. Months melted into each other, a whirlwind of exhilarating progress for Virix. Our acquisition of Omnicorp was complete, the integration process shockingly smooth, a testament to Zara's unparalleled leadership and our team's dedication. We were no longer just a stealth startup. We were a titan, a formidable presence in the tech landscape known for our innovative solutions and our unwavering commitment to security. Then came the unveiling. A groundbreaking innovation, a proprietary security protocol so advanced it fundamentally redefined national security tech. It wasn't just an upgrade. It was a paradigm shift, rendering existing technologies, including those relied upon by major government agencies, virtually obsolete. This was a direct result of years of meticulous research and development, a testament to the vision I had cultivated behind my DNA persona. The demonstration to the U.S. Defense Department was flawless. We presented an airtight case for why Virix's technology wasn't just an improvement, but a critical necessity for the nation's future security. The implications were immense. Our system offered an unprecedented level of protection, a comprehensive defense against the sophisticated cyber threats of the modern world. The decision makers, initially skeptical, were utterly convinced. I watched, from a strategic distance, as the news broke. It began with whispers, then official announcements. The U.S. Defense Department, citing evolving security needs and a commitment to utilizing cutting-edge technology, began severing ties with long-standing contractors. Among them, Ethan's family's company, the very firm they had lauded as the pinnacle of their legacy. The news sent shockwaves through the industry. Contracts worth billions, once held securely by the waters, were now up for grabs. And one by one, those colossal, crucial contracts were awarded to one name and one name only, Virix Technologies. It wasn't a hostile takeover. It was a testament to superior innovation. My company simply offered a PR product so far beyond the competition, so vital to national security, that the government had no choice but to transition. The Waters Company, relying on outdated systems and a network built on old connections rather than true merit, could not compete. Their technology was simply not good enough, and their influence, once seemingly impenetrable, began to crumble under the weight of true technological superiority. The implosion was swift and brutal. Whispers of financial ruin began to swirl, growing louder with each lost contract. Their stock plummeted. Key personnel, sensing the sinking ship, began jumping overboard. Long-held partnerships dissolved. The very legacy they had so fiercely protected, so ruthlessly pursued, was disintegrating before their eyes. I heard snippets of it, of course. Casual conversations among colleagues, hushed tones from reporters, articles detailing the water's rapid downfall. They were scrambling, desperately trying to salvage what they could. But it was too late. Their foundation was built on sand, on a complacent belief in their inherited status, while mine was built on ironclad code and relentless innovation. There was no sense of satisfaction, no cheering, just a quiet acknowledgement of consequences. They chose legacy over genuine worth, status over skill. And now, the natural order of things was simply reasserting itself. They had discarded me, a startup girl, for a more suitable match for status and power. And in doing so, they had unwittingly cleared the path for my company to rise, to claim the very contracts and influence they so desperately coveted. The irony was not lost on me. As their world crumbled, mine was solidifying, becoming an unshakable force. And I knew, with a certainty that settled deep in my bones, that it was only a matter of time before our paths would cross again, under very different circumstances. It was a dreary, typical DC afternoon. Rain lashed against the windows of the Virix Technologies headquarters, mirroring the storm brewing outside their former empire. I was in my sleek, minimalist corner office, overlooking the Potomac, reviewing a quarterly report. The irony of my current vantage point, quite literally overlooking the city where their legacy had imploded, was not lost on me. Then my executive assistant buzzed through. "Ms. Dean, you have visitors." Her voice held a hint of surprise, almost disbelief. "They say it's urgent." Eleanor Waters and Ethan Waters. A slow, deliberate smile touched my lips. The prophecy Zara had made, the unspoken certainty I'd carried, was finally coming to pass. "Send them in," I said, my voice calm, unwavering. They walked in, Eleanor first, then Ethan. Their usual polished confidence had been replaced by a subtle dishevelment, almost imperceptible to the untrained eye, but glaringly obvious to me. Eleanor's perfect coiffure seemed a little less perfect, her expensive suit a shade too tight around shoulders that now seemed to slump. Ethan, once radiating youthful arrogance, looked drawn, his gaze darting around the room, avoiding mine. Their very presence in my office, in the heart of my empire, was an act of surrender, a testament to their desperate situation. They stood awkwardly for a moment, clearly unsure how to proceed. I remained seated behind my vast, burnished desk, my expression neutral, my internal world a whirlwind of calculated calm. I gestured towards the two ergonomic chairs opposite me. "Please have a seat." Eleanor, ever the socialite, attempted a semblance of her old charm, though the effort was transparent. "Aurora, my dear. Thank you for seeing us on such short notice." Her voice, once so dismissive, now carried a forced politeness, a desperate plea buried beneath layers of ingrained entitlement. Ethan, quieter than his mother, finally met my eyes, a flicker of something akin to shame or perhaps just discomfort in their depths. He cleared his throat. I simply waited, allowing the silence to stretch, letting the weight of their fall press down on them. Finally, Eleanor broke. We find ourselves in a rather precarious position," she began, her voice strained. "As you may know, our family firm. We've encountered some unexpected challenges." "Challenges?" I repeated, my voice mild, almost curious. I understood it was an unprecedented collapse of market share and government contracts, primarily due to an inability to adapt to modern technological demands. I watched their faces carefully as I spoke, noting the flinch, the tightening of Eleanor's jaw. Eleanor swallowed. "Well, yes, to put it bluntly. Our once robust network seems to have evaporated, and our previous technology, which was once quite adequate, is no longer considered cutting edge." Her words dripped with humiliation, a bitter pill she was forced to swallow. Ethan interjected, his voice raspy. "We're facing ruin, Aurora. Complete financial ruin. Everything my family has built for generations, it's all gone. Unless..." He trailed off, his gaze pleading. "Unless?" I prompted, leaning back slightly in my chair, allowing myself a moment to savor the raw desperation emanating from them. Eleanor picked up the thread, her voice gaining a desperate urgency. "Unless you can help us. We've heard rumors, of course, of VIREX's remarkable capabilities. Your astounding success." There was a subtle emphasis on your, a concession to my power they would never have made before. "We were hoping. Perhaps an investment? A partnership? Your technology is clearly superior. You could save us." They laid out their dire situation, their company's assets crumbling, their once powerful connections useless. They begged me, not with overt words, but with their posture, their humbled tones, the sheer vulnerability in their eyes. They reeked of entitlement buried under politeness, a sense of having been unjustly wronged, even as they sought my salvation. I listened. I let them finish their pathetic proposal. I absorbed every word, every concession they were forced to make. When they finally fell silent, the only sound was the rain outside. Then I spoke, my voice calm, clear, and utterly devoid of emotion. You've heard of Dean A., I presume? Eleanor's brow furrowed. The mysterious founder of Virix? Of course. A brilliant mind, we've heard, though rather reclusive. She paused, a flicker of suspicion in her eyes. But what does that have to do with? I leaned forward, placing my hands flat on the desk, my gaze locking with hers, then with Ethan's a slow, chilling smile spread across my face. I'm Dean A. The air in the room seemed to crackle. Eleanor's mouth dropped open, her eyes widening in genuine shock, her carefully constructed composure utterly shattered. Ethan gasped, a choked, primal sound, his face draining of all color. The realization, the sheer, unimaginable magnitude of it, slammed into them with the force of a wrecking ball. The startup girl they had dismissed, the woman they had discarded, was the very person who held their future, their survival, in her hands. Their faces were a canvas of stunned, horrified recognition. And for the first time, I allowed myself to feel the profound satisfaction of complete, undeniable triumph. Deep silence in the room after my revelation was electrifying, thick with the weight of shattered assumptions and raw shock. Eleanor looked like she'd seen a ghost, her face pale, her jaw slack. Ethan, however, was already recovering, his mind, ever opportunistic, scrambling for a new angle. He straightened in his chair, a familiar, charming glint, though now tinged with desperation, entering his eyes. Aurora. Dine, he stammered, the words testing on his tongue, as if trying to reconcile the two identities. This is truly incredible. Unbelievable. He paused, then leaned forward, adopting a tone of familiar intimacy, the one he used to use on me. Look, I know things ended badly. My family. There was a lot of pressure. But now that I understand the full scope of what you've built, what you truly are. He gestured vaguely, encompassing my office, my company, my undeniable power. This changes everything. Madison. She and we actually ended things a while ago. It just wasn't working out. No hard feelings, just different paths, you know? He rushed the words, a flimsy attempt to erase months of very public engagement. But Aurora, what we had, it was real. It was always real. We could rekindle that. Imagine what we could achieve together. With my family's connections and your innovative genius. A true power couple, just like we always talked about. The sheer audacity of it left me speechless for a moment. He was trying to rewrite history, sweeping away the brutal discard, the public humiliation, the very reasons I was sitting here in unmatched power. He saw my success, not as a boundary, but as an opportunity for himself. His desperate attempt to rekindle what we had felt like a perverse echo of our past, only this time drenched in his newfound humility born of financial ruin, not genuine affection. I finally found my voice, calm, controlled, utterly devoid of the warmth he remembered. Ethan, I said, my voice low, cutting through his desperate monologue. You can't rebuild bridges you helped burn. His face fell. Eleanor, who had been watching with rapt attention, silently urged him on with a subtle nod. But we were meant to be, he pressed, pushing even further, oblivious to the chasm he'd created. Our bond was special. You know it was. I leaned forward, mirroring his posture, my gaze unwavering. Special, I repeated, a ghost of a smile touching my lips. What was special, Ethan, was your family's insistence that I wasn't enough. What was special was your willingness to prioritize legacy over love. What was special was being discarded like last season's fashion at your mother's perfectly orchestrated brunch. Was that part of our special bond? He flinched, his eyes darting away, unable to hold my gaze. Eleanor shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Now, I continued, my tone hardening, moving from personal history to cold, hard business. let's talk about why you're actually here. You need help. Virix is in a position to offer that help. Their faces brightened, a flicker of hope returning. But not on your terms. On mine. My voice was graceful, yet it carried an undeniable icy edge that left no room for doubt. You spoke of investment, of partnership. I am willing to offer your ruined company a lifeline. 10% of your existing equity for a 90% equity take from Virix. Eleanor gasped, a sharp, choked sound. 90%? She sputtered, outrage momentarily overriding her desperation. That's practically nothing. We'd be giving away everything. You've already given away everything, I responded, my voice flat, holding her gaze. Your government contracts, your market share, your reputation. You have a crumbling shell of a company. I am offering to acquire your remaining assets, absorb your intellectual property if it has any value left, and provide your remaining employees with a secure future within Virix. In return, your family retains a nominal stake, a symbolic 10%, in what will effectively become a subsidiary of my corporation. Think of it as a mercy purchase, not an investment. Ethan looked at his mother, then back at me, his face a mixture of shock, defeat, and dawning realization. It's a takeover. It's business, I corrected, my smile chillingly corporate. Your company needs Virix to survive. Virix, however, does not need your company. This is my offer. Take it or leave it. The choice is yours. But understand, this offer is time-sensitive. Competitors are circling. I sat back, crossing my arms, letting my proposal settle in the stunned silence. The power had shifted irrevocably. They, who once held all the cards, were now completely at my mercy. Their fate, their legacy, was no longer in their hands, nor in the hands of presidents or political connections. It was in mine. And I was simply conducting business. My business. The Waters family, after much agonizing, ultimately accepted my terms. They had no real choice. The acquisition of their crumbling assets proceeded, efficient and dispassionate. Observing their forced departure from the company that had defined their family for generations, I felt not triumph, but a quiet satisfaction. It wasn't about destroying them, but about exposing the hollowness of their values, the fragility of their supposed power. And Ethan? He vanished from my life again, this time permanently. The last I heard, he was trying to reinvent himself, far from the DC glare, stripped of his family's influence. As for Madison Bright, she proved herself to be more than just a president's daughter. She quickly distanced herself from the Waters family's implosion, maintaining her political acumen and forging her own path, unburdened by the expectations of a prearranged legacy. I actually admired her quiet strength, once I allowed myself to see it. Looking back, there are so many lessons in this convoluted, high-drama chapter of my life. Heartbreak leaves scars, yes, but those scars can be badges of honor, proof of battles fought and won. I could have let their betrayal consume me, could have spiraled into bitterness. For a brief moment, I did. But Zara, my unwavering friend, reminded me of who I truly was. I smile now, not because I revel in their downfall, but because I truly rebuilt myself. I took the shards of my broken heart and forged something stronger, more resilient. I didn't need to become cold, calculating, or cruel to survive. What I needed was to become undeniable. I needed to stand in my power unapologetically and show the world that merit, innovation, and integrity are far more valuable than inherited status or political machinations. My focus has shifted. My wealth, the foundation of which came from pure, unadulterated hard work and vision, now serves a greater purpose. I use it to empower other overlooked voices, especially women in business, in tech, and fields where they are constantly underestimated. That anonymous $25 million donation was just the beginning. We've established mentorship programs, venture funds specifically for female founders, and educational initiatives to bridge the gender gap in STEM. I share my story, not as a cautionary tale of love lost, but as an inspiring narrative of self-discovery and resilience. Breaking up with Ethan, while painful, was the best thing that ever happened to me. It forced me to confront my own vulnerabilities, to step out of his shadow, and to fully embrace the formidable woman I was becoming. It taught me that true love, And true partnership should never require you to diminish your own light or compromise your worth. I didn't need love to validate my existence. I found my validation in my vision, in my work, in my ability to create something meaningful and impactful. And that, surprisingly, brought me a far deeper sense of peace and fulfillment than any romantic relationship ever could. The tables didn't just turn. They flipped, and I was the one spinning them. My journey taught me some critical truths. Trust your gut, value your worth, and never underestimate the quiet power of a person who is relentlessly building while others are busy performing. Revenge, they say, is best served cold. But I prefer to think of it differently. Revenge is best served successful. Outro music begins, soft and reflective, as Aurora's silhouette is seen overlooking the city from her skyscraper balcony, a symbol of her quiet, undeniable power.